Hello, everyone. Welcome to this conversation between me and Verena. If you've been listening to the podcast, you know Verena very well. And if you are listening to Verena's YouTube, you know me very well because we've been on each other's channels for some time. Yeah, so Verena reached out to me a couple days ago, or maybe what is time anymore? I feel like I can't keep track.
Yesterday.
Yeah, yes, yesterday. And she was like, I want to have a casual conversation with you about Jupiter and Gemini. And I was really intrigued by the idea. And I thought, okay, if we can find a time, why not? We found a time. So here we are. And if you are listening to or watching the YouTube video, you'll see that unplanned, uncoordinated, Verena and I are both wearing black. I was joking before we started recording that we're part of the same band. And that to me feels so much like Jupiter and Gemini, with
Yeah,
Gemini
yeah,
being the twins.
yeah,
Yeah.
the twins. And it's so
Hmm.
funny, Jonathan, because I had this super spontaneous idea to record a talk with you about Jupiter and Gemini
Hmm.
yesterday in the morning when I was riding my bicycle. I have Mars in Gemini, by the way. And I mean, now it's kind of 24 hours later, and we are sitting here and we are recording it. And we are both so Gemini style, not really prepared, but I'm very sure that we will give you a lot of inspiration.
Hmm.
Jupiter in Gemini. And yeah, I'm just happy to very curiously explore Jupiter and Gemini together with you.
Yeah.
And yes, if you are watching it on my YouTube channel, you see us. We are both wearing black. And if you are listening on Jonathan's podcast, you can listen to us. So yeah, thank you that I'm allowed to be on your podcast and welcome to my YouTube channel again.
Yeah.
Um, it's always a pleasure.
Always such a pleasure. Do you want to introduce yourself, Verena, just really briefly?
Yeah, thank you. I'm Verena Borell. I am living in Austria and oh, now we come to the Gemini labels. Woo. I work with evolutionary astrology. I work with my intuition, and I also are doing my somatic experiencing professional
Mm.
training with Somatic Experiencing International. I'm in the first year there. I'm student there, and yeah, I teach astrology in German and English language in several workshops and programs and one-on-one, and I give one-on-one astro somatic guidances and one-on-one astro sessions. Yeah, I would
Oh,
say that's it for
I
now.
love that. Yeah, thank you. My name is Jonathan. You may know me from Verena's channel or because you're listening to this podcast, obviously. I also am an astrologer. I am a mystic. I work with many different modalities. And yeah, I mostly do one-on-one sessions these days, either single sessions or like a longer mentorship container. And also currently cooking up a bunch of offerings, which hopefully will be launched in Jupiter and Gemini. Let's see. Mhm.
And we can come back to our offerings at the end of the talk, I guess. Yeah,
Cool.
talking
Yeah,
more
we'll do
about
that.
our
Mhm.
offerings.
Sounds good.
And I think it would be fun, just if you want to, if it would be fun if we share our Gemini placements.
Oh,
Shall
yes.
we?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I am a Virgo rising, so Gemini is on my 10th house, and I have my moon in Gemini. I have also a bunch of asteroids in Gemini, but I think
Yeah.
primarily moon in Gemini. What about you, Verena?
Um, I am a Gemini rising, so I have my ascendant in Gemini. I have Gemini in my 12th house, so I work with porphyry house system. Gemini is in my 12th house. And I have my Mars conjunct my AC in Gemini in the 12th house. I have my Chiron in the 12th house. I have my Mercury in the 12th house. Um, yeah, and they are all facing a lot of Sagittarius placements. So
Hmm.
I have I would say, pretty heavy Gemini Sagittarius axis.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe my Jupiter's in Aries, your Jupiter's in Cancer, right?
Yeah, my Jupiter is in Cancer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have both Mercury as our chart rulers. So we are both Gemini. Yeah. The fun thing is, and maybe that leads us into this discussion, is that my son is actually in Taurus and was recently kissed and embraced and loved by Jupiter because Jupiter was in Taurus and now Jupiter will ingress into Gemini on, I just have the Central European time on
Yeah.
May 26th. I think
Mhm.
in the US it's May 25th. Is this
Mhm.
correct?
I
Yeah.
think it's May 25th. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
Jupiter will stay in Gemini until May 26th, 2025. So around 1 year. And yeah, how do you feel about Jupiter and Gemini? I mean, we had this very intense Taurus energy. Not only Jupiter was in Taurus, but we also had the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in Taurus in April. And now, with all of this Taurus energy, I experience it as a very, we need this Taurus grounding to now dive into Gemini. But before I expand more on that, I would love to ask you this curious question. How do you
Yeah.
think about it?
Yeah. I am, I love that you're bringing in Jupiter and Taurus as kind of this. Well, we're currently in this estuary period, right? We're currently in this transition period from Jupiter and Taurus to Jupiter and Gemini. And I'm continuing to contemplate and reflect on what one of my astrology teachers, Austin Coppock, says about the agenda of Jupiter, which is that the agenda of Jupiter is to promote coherence. And when we think about coherence, we think about the different parts kind of working together in a way that's um, serving a common purpose, right? When we think about Jupiter, Jupiter is associated with society, right? With like the ways in which we create social bonds with one another in order to keep a larger body of people or a larger body of beings alive and well and moving in a direction that's kind of right for the collective. And I think what's interesting about Jupiter and Gemini is that it's coming after Jupiter is in Taurus, right? So when we're experiencing Jupiter in Taurus, I think a lot about how Taurus has to do with the land, Taurus has to do with the body, and as we've seen in the past year, there's been a lot of conversations about what it means to um, have a new relationship with our bodies, right? How what it means to have um, a healthier relationship with productivity, with time, with the natural cycles of the body and also the earth, you know. And I'm not saying that we've succeeded necessarily while Jupiter is in Taurus to kind of move the needle, but I think the ways that we've been thinking about it and talking about it has really shifted. Even right before this conversation, you and I have been talking about the way that we approach our work and maybe where we are spending too much energy doing things that are ultimately not really A, moving the needle very much for us, right? And B, kind of causing us to feel bogged down a little bit, right? And really trusting the body's intelligence, I think, has been a message for Jupiter and Taurus. And what I see with Jupiter moving into Gemini is that we're going to maybe see places where um, we haven't fully allowed ourselves to be as nimble and as curious as we want to be, right? And Jupiter is really interesting because it has been my experience, Verena, that Jupiter transits are really challenging,
Yes,
actually.
yes,
Jupiter transits are very challenging, and it's kind of counterintuitive because when we look at a lot of the different textbooks, you know, the standard definition of Jupiter is Jupiter rules abundance, luck, right? Ease. And I think that's all true. Expansion is another keyword, right? But I think oftentimes what Jupiter can really magnify are all the different places in our systems, in our relationships that have placed barriers or blockages to receiving that abundance, to experiencing that expansion, right? To um, promoting that growth. So I think there's something here about how, as Jupiter is entering Gemini, we're being asked to move a little bit more quickly. We're being asked to trust our intuition. We're being asked to maybe be a little bit more spontaneous and be a little bit more random. And when we have set up our lives to kind of be this heavy machinery that needs to do 15 million different steps before we go to the next stage, right? That's all I think going to be really challenged throughout um, Jupiter's time in Gemini. Yeah. What about you? What's coming up for you?
I love what you're saying, Jonathan, and I have so many thoughts about that.
Mm,
My Mercury in Gemini is spinning. Um, First of all, I agree completely with this idea that Jupiter transits always shower you with money and abundance. I was really, really confused when I had my Jupiter return, and it was not fun. Not fun at all. And
yeah.
Jupiter on my MC was not fun at all, too.
Mm-mm.
I agree what you say about expansion and maybe blockages that, yeah, against these expansion. I also would say that, and one of my teachers brought me to this idea that often we need to, Jupiter takes things away in order to make space for a bigger truth.
Yes.
So I experienced with Jupiter transits that many, many, many things fall apart or, yeah, leave me, so to say, in order to really feel what is true for me.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to make space for expansion. And one of my biggest learnings with Jupiter and Taurus, and just if you're watching it or if you're listening to it, we recorded 1 year ago a beautiful video about Jupiter and Taurus, the body as the wisdom keeper.
Mm-hmm.
And I can link it in the video description, and maybe you want to link it in your podcast too.
Yeah, I'll
Um,
do that.
so one of my biggest Jupiter and Taurus experiences, and I as a Taurus sun, as a 22-degree Taurus sun, have all of these Taurus energy right now on my sun with Jupiter and Uranus. I mean, I started my somatic experiencing professional training in this year, and one of my learnings is really simplicity. That simplicity is the key to abundance. So I personally experienced Taurus, Jupiter and Taurus in my own life and how I see it in the field with really a new way to approach the body, to approach what we really need, to come back to the body, to come back to the earth, to come back to this deep, deep wisdom. And also really seeing what you really need and value. And I recognized in my own life and in the life of, I mean, I work as a teacher. And I saw also with my students that there was a slowing down in the way we consume, that there was a slowing down. Yeah, and more need for rest and integration.
Mm-hmm.
And really, what do I truly need in a
Yeah.
way? And
Mm-hmm.
less is more. So this is one of my biggest learnings. And I feel that now when Jupiter moves into Gemini, we really need this. We need this foundation, this settling, this grounding, what is truly valuable for us, what we truly need. We need the connection to our body, to our capacity, to our resources, so that we don't get confused and overwhelmed when we are tapping into the Gemini frequency. And
Mm.
I think that now it's time to move out of, or no, I don't think so because I love Taurus. But I think it's maybe for there is something around you can get Gemini, the curiosity of Gemini, lovingly and kindly takes Taurus out of the chill out garden zone and says, hey, but look, there are other sorts and kinds of roses that you maybe want to plant in your garden. Don't stick just with what you have. And in Taurus, we
Yeah.
learn what we have. And I think that Jupiter and Gemini can bring a lot of openness, a
Mm,
lot of curiosity. And I also see, I loved what you said about Jupiter as as a planet that is all about coherence. I
mm,
see
mm,
Jupiter as this part of us that experiences life as a journey. And for me, Jupiter is so much about experienced, learned wisdom. It's about, yeah, continuously being on a journey and therefore making new experiences, therefore widening our horizon, therefore expanding what is true and meaningful for us. So,
mhm,
and I think that when now Jupiter is on the journey through Gemini, it's very much about this, okay, which new directions might open up? Which
mm.
pathways can I go?
Yeah.
And can I be more curious? And maybe
Mhm,
can I bring more lightness? And I think that we need the Taurus grounding to not get lost. And there also will be 3 Saturn squares. So Jupiter will square Saturn in summer, in August, in December, and in no, in August, in December, and in June. Yeah. Oh, then it's out of Gemini. So it's not just 2. In August and in December,
mm,
will Jupiter square Saturn. And I
yeah.
think that this will bring some interruption and some. I mean, we can talk more about that, but I had the feeling that
Mm,
there is something like a call to, okay, now you opened up, you're super curious, you're maybe a little bit airy fairy, and
mm,
what serves you long term, come back to your
mm,
roots, ground
mm,
yourself, what is
mhm,
actually sustainable here.
mm, mm.
But yeah, it's
Yeah. Yeah, I think when we're thinking specifically about Jupiter squaring Saturn in Pisces, a question that's coming to my mind is how is a particular interest, right, that is novel to us? Because I think Jupiter in Gemini is going to lead us to places that feel novel, that feel temporarily exciting, like maybe picking up a new hobby, right? Or like burgeoning of a new relationship, meeting new communities, just kind of maybe introducing aspects that are a little bit different than what we've been used to. I think the square with Saturn and Pisces is going to ask us to confront whether this fits into a larger picture of our aspirations, right? With Saturn and Pisces, I think a lot about, is this actually in alignment with my dreams? You know, the dreams that are really true to me, right? And when we're talking about dreams, it's interesting because even in the way that we use it in culture, there are two different meanings, right? One is we talk about dreams in terms of like you go to sleep and you have these random dreams, and then you call up your friends and you're like, hey, I dreamt about you and we were in this little boat, and then the boat transferred into like an airplane, right? Like the nonsensical dreams. And then we also experience or we talk about dreams being like, oh, I've always wanted to be a pilot, and maybe it's time for me to finally go to like pilot school or whatever that dream is, right? So we talk about dreams in terms of kind of the ephemeral dreams, and we talk about dreams in terms of dreams that are really deeply meaningful to us that may take a long time for us to realize, right? And when I think about Saturn in Pisces, I think more about the second definition. I think more about like these dreams that keep coming back to us. Like for me, for example, thinking about how I've always felt myself to be a musician, someone who likes to write songs, right? And I'm continuing to come back to that dream, even if my adult brain is telling me, like, no, you're never going to be Taylor Swift, right? Like, there's something I think about that square that's a moment of reckoning and reviewing if the new things we have been introducing into our lives, if this new project, this new hobby, this new relationship actually has um, any sort of contribution to that dream, right? And when we look at the traditional rulership, it's interesting too, thinking about that
Yeah,
square, Verena, because
I thought about that too.
Saturn, right, Saturn in Pisces is traditionally ruled by that Jupiter in Gemini, right? And we can also here bring in another piece, which is Jupiter is at home in Sagittarius in traditional astrology, and therefore it's what we call an exile in Jupiter in Gemini, right? When Jupiter is in Gemini. And I think there's something here about, yes, allowing ourselves to explore, but to your point earlier, what does it mean to continue to come back to a sense of simplicity as maybe our compass, right? I think Jupiter in Taurus um, can teach us about how simplicity is the key to abundance. And Jupiter in Gemini can teach us the value of simplicity as the key to lightness and novelty and exploration, right? There's something here about really embodying the archetype of the fool in the tarot. It's like, what will allow you to fall down the rabbit hole, to speak in Alice terms. I love Alice, so I'm always bringing in Alice into the conversation. This idea of like, how light can I make my vehicle be? How light can I make my world be so that I can explore, right? Mhm.
I love that. And Jonathan, I also think that one thing that I want to say to the Saturn squares too, and I
Mm,
totally go with this, yeah, this long-term visions, this long-term dreams, and what I'm doing right now, is it kind of paying into that or not,
mm,
or
mhm,
contributing to that or not?
mhm,
Um, and the other thing that I was thinking of is, so I work with evolutionary astrology. So in evolutionary astrology, Jupiter is not the ruler of Pisces, but I totally feel it. But we have a similar topic. Jupiter is very much about the expansion, and Saturn is very much about the contraction.
yeah.
And what I learn right now in my somatic experiencing training about the nervous system is that we have a very, very natural flow in our life and in our nervous system between contraction and expansion.
Mm,
And then we contract. It's a very natural flow.
yeah.
And I have the feeling that Jupiter squaring Saturn, and we have with Saturn and Pisces this already this mixed up thing between extraction and expansion and contraction. And I
Mm,
think that these Jupiter and Gemini, Saturn and Pisces squares can really bring up this, wow, I opened up, but now it's maybe time to withdraw, to go in the yin energy of Pisces, to really feel and to reflect upon, okay, is this in alignment with my long-term dreams, goals, whatever? Does
yeah.
that serve me long-term?
Mhm,
So this calling in after this excitement that can come with
mhm.
Gemini.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I also see with, I must admit that I am a little bit scared by this transit because everything that is going through Gemini and emphasizing my already pretty strong Gemini energy can be, and I all have it in the 12th house, so it
Mm,
can be quite overwhelming.
yeah.
And what I see with people with folks who have Jupiter and Gemini natally, I often see that there is this restlessness to read
Mhm,
all the books,
yeah.
this nervousness even to don't get all the teachings. Jupiter and Sagittarius on themselves can be this, okay, I'm seeking constantly, and there is this big lesson, I think, with Sagittarius, that you're grounding while you are on the path. And
Mhm.
you notice that truth is just, you can just, yeah, you need to pause and stop and breathe to really, that truth can come through you.
Yeah.
And I think that with Jupiter in Gemini, there can be a certain restlessness. And
Hmm.
we live in a world where overstimulation is, we are 24/7 hours overstimulated.
Absolutely.
And I think that
Absolutely.
it will be very much, on the one hand, the Taurus energy that we are coming from, uh,
Mm.
that helps us to ground, also the Saturn squares, and also um, this deep wisdom of Jupiter, actually, to see the bigger picture, to not
Right.
get lost. And I
Hmm.
love what you said about, I think you said Jupiter and Gemini is that curiosity can be a key. And
Yeah.
I'm totally here for it. I think our world needs more curiosity and kindness. And I really hope that we will experience more curiosity and kindness in our communities.
Mm.
I will also try in Pluto and Aquarius, in our relationships. Jupiter will also try in the South Node in Libra.
Yeah.
Curiosity, more acceptance, more openness towards other opinions and belief systems and religions and perspectives on life. And also, I think on a very personal level, it will be very important to dig into the intuition that Jupiter brings. I mean, Gemini asks the question, and Sagittarius and Jupiter just knows without knowing why you know it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love everything you're bringing in, Verena. It's making me think about making sense and how making sense is a really interesting topic. And I think true to Gemini fashion, let's kind of dissect it a little bit, right? Because I think making sense is a very important feature of being human, right? If we don't try to make sense of things, living becomes way too overwhelming. And I think it's part of how our brain has evolved that we try to make up stories about how, one aspect of reality is making sense or is in connection with another aspect of reality, right? And I think to bring in the piece around curiosity here, one of the challenges I think of Jupiter in Gemini is that Jupiter likes to jump to that conclusion, right? Jupiter is like, I know, I believe, like it has that conviction. But I think in the realm of Gemini, it's important to not think that we know before we actually have all the information. Like I think when I think about curiosity, there's so many different ways that we can be curious, right? But one way I'm currently thinking about curiosity and practicing it in my own life is asking a couple questions. One is, what do I not know about the situation, right? Or what am I not actually understanding from what the person is saying? I think I'm understanding. I want to jump into the conclusion that I understand, but is that true? Like giving ourselves a little bit of space to question, right? Is very important, especially when it comes to um, more emotional things, right? Because we can fall into the trap of assuming that somebody is saying something and that they're coming from a certain place or coming from a certain intention. And the reality is, and I think this is Gemini medicine, right? We all are little universes onto ourselves. We can never fully know where the other person's coming from. And I think the best we can do is actually to build these micro bridges between one another. And, rather than jumping into conclusions, maybe ask more questions, And I think this is something that is actually so difficult to do because I think we live in a culture where we don't want to ask questions because if we ask questions, we're either going to offend people or we're going to sound stupid, right? We don't want to do either of those things. But I think part of maybe working with Jupiter and Gemini is like breaking up the staleness of that assumption a little bit, right? Noticing places in ourselves where maybe we want to kind of think big when actually we're really being asked to think very locally, right? We might be, I'm thinking about, for example, different times that I have arguments with friends or with my partner, where maybe I jump into a conclusion and they jump into another conclusion, and we're not really seeing eye to eye simply because we haven't done the due diligence of actually asking the questions, of being like,
Yeah.
that is an interesting statement. What do you mean by that? Do you want to talk more about it? Right? And I think this is not, this takes a lot of skill actually to do that because we have to make space for ourselves to feel the emotions that we are feeling based on what that person is saying and to not fully believe in that feeling, right? Like, what does it mean to say, oh, the feelings are there, the feelings are real because I'm experiencing it, but the feelings may not be the truth.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I love that. And you know what came up for me while you were speaking was that uh, especially in the client situations, it can be so helpful. And I think that we can do that also with our friends and family members to say,
Mhm.
when somebody stopped talking or when they have finished, that you say, okay, I understood that you were saying this and that.
Yes.
So this is a very Gemini communication technique, I would say, to just
Mhm.
repeat what you heard the other person
Mhm.
saying, because then the other person can say, actually, yes, or actually, no, that's not what I meant.
Right.
Because I
Right.
think with Jupiter and Gemini, we are playing with this Sagittarius Gemini energy, which is all about this very young, air,
Mhm.
fire, learning, teaching, knowing, meaning making, asking questions, answering questions. And I think we really, maybe, hopefully, learn to consciously play with these very intellectual energies. And
Right.
I personally love that you say that it's really this curiosity and this openness to ask questions towards ourselves, towards others,
Mm.
in questioning our own meaning of life. And I can see for myself maybe some not so comfortable times because what I experience with Jupiter transits too, and I see it with my clients, that there are often crises in consciousness.
Yeah.
Crisis in, is this my true path? Is this
Mm.
aligned? What am
Mhm.
I doing here? Does that
Mhm.
make sense? Is this meaningful for me?
Yeah.
So, and I think that there are some human beings out on this planet who should maybe sometimes ask themselves if it's actually meaningful what they do. So
Mm.
just to put out that, but I think for you and me and everyone who listens here, I think asking these questions with this curious kindness of Gemini
Yeah.
be actually very refreshing. So really allowing yourself to say, oh, maybe not. Maybe
Mhm.
I'm not on an aligned path. Maybe
Mhm.
I need to change my direction. And that's
Yeah.
okay.
Mhm.
And all the way that I walked so far was perfectly okay to bring me to this point. But now I feel open and light and airy fairy enough to take on a new direction.
Yeah.
And I think at these points, it's just really, really important to come back to the Jupiter wisdom of our intuition, to lean into what we learned with Jupiter and Taurus about our values, and to also, and this might be happening around these squares to Saturn, to check in with our long-term goals and visions. But I think that I see the potential of this transit that I mean, Gemini is connected to the magician.
Mm-hmm.
There can be a magic, and I have the feeling that new pathways will open up. When we are open up, maybe new possibilities come to us, even within friendships. It's in the Jupiter in Gemini is in a relationship to the South Node in Libra and to Pluto in Aquarius. So there will be maybe this. I think many of us experience, since the North Node is in Aries and the South Node in Libra, rupture within relationships, changes within relationships, all of this stuff. And I have the feeling that there might be a new openness, new people coming into your life. You may be more outgoing. And yeah, I think there is a huge potential. And also, as a person who has already a lot of air in their energetic setup, aka the birth chart, I think it is very important to not get confused, to not get overwhelmed, to come back to the essence, to the ground, to the center again and again.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. That's such powerful wisdom. Well, I think that brings us to the end of our time. I'm curious if there's any offerings that you want to share, Verena, before we end, or any kind of final words about Jupiter and Gemini, anything you want to share before we close out?
Yeah, thank you for inviting me, Jonathan. And I will ask you in a second the same thing. So maybe one thing is really lean into this curiosity, this kind curiosity, and don't get lost and don't get confused. And especially, I'm a little bit afraid that thousands of new communication apps and things are popping up. So really, I think that simplicity might be an anchor during this time. And I have many offerings. I have many offerings that I could promote, but I want to promote now in this video, very Jupiter and Gemini style, my one-on-one mentoring. So I'm offering in German and in English language one-on-one astro mentoring, where I teach you one-on-one. We create together your schedule, your curriculum. One of my favorite topics are evolutionary astrology, Venus and Mercury cycle, asteroid goddesses, transits, life cycle transits, Saturn, Uranus transits. So yeah, if you are interested to learn one-on-one astrology with me, you can contact me, and the link is in the show notes for my one-on-one astro mentoring. And then we put together a beautiful schedule for you and a beautiful curriculum. And I also love to support you with astrology, or on your learning journey with astrology, if you want to use astrology as an additional tool to make your own offerings more holistic. So for example, if you work as a coach, as a healing practitioner, and you want to weave astrology into your practice, I have a Mercury and Gemini brain, and I have many ideas how you can weave astrology into your offerings, and I'm very happy to help you with that too in a one-on-one mentoring. And I have another one-on-one offering. It's my soul and soma guidance. So I guide you over several months on your personal journey on the base of, or I work with evolutionary astrology and with somatic experiencing. So to really not only support you on a spiritual level and on an intellectual level, but also on a body level, on a somatic level. And you find the links in the show notes and in the video description. And if you want to learn astrology with me, but you are not interested in a one-on-one mentoring, then you find several courses, workshops in German and English language on my website.
Thank you. So beautiful. I love working with you, Verena. I have also been a recipient of Verena's gifts and sessions, and you are just an incredible practitioner. So, highly recommend everyone check out Verena's one-on-one offerings.
Mm.
Um,
Jonathan,
yeah.
how about you? And I want to say, because you just said so beautiful things about me, I also received Jonathan's gifts, and I highly recommend everything that Jonathan is doing. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. That's so kind. As for me, let's see if there's any final words here about Jupiter and Gemini. You know what's coming up in this moment is very interesting. When I felt into it, I felt this kind of childlike energy, and I'm curious if maybe one of the entryway into this transit may be to return to like a childhood interest or like a childhood um maybe even obsession that maybe you've kind of put away for a while and let yourself um yeah, explore that, and it's always interesting to me, this act of coming back to something that was really meaningful when we were much younger, because obviously we change, right? And throughout our growth, we are not the same person anymore. And coming back into these um, interests or these even maybe relationships too, like friendships that we haven't been tending to for a while, can be really, yeah, an interesting exploration and may help us integrate parts of our past that maybe we have not really fully been in touch with for a while. Um, yeah, I think maybe that's the last word I'll say about that. And as for me and my offerings, these days I mostly do one-on-one. I do three types of sessions. I do astrology readings. I do divination, where I would cast um, an I Ching hexagram and also work with the tarot during the session. And I do what I call subtle alchemy sessions, which is basically this blend between Akashic energy work and hypnosis. And I also do human design readings. It's not on my website, so if you're interested, you can reach out to me and we'll figure something out. Um, but yeah, those are my offerings if you are interested in working like single sessions or um, a few sessions. And I also offer a longer term mentorship. Um, and it's what I call like mystery mentorship, because essentially, what I found is this mentorship attracts people who are really interested in creating their own spiritual practice and understanding who they are as spiritual beings over a longer period of time. So we work together for 6 months and we meet once a week. So it's pretty intense. And we get to really explore what your spiritual path actually looks like through you kind of bringing in your own life experience and materials into the container. It's not really I'm very, very open to helping people learn astrology or tarot or whatever modality it is that they want to learn. But I found that the focus really is in cultivating one's own perspective and one's own
Yeah.
um yeah, personality, actually, which is it's interesting because I feel like when we think about personality, sometimes I don't know, it's almost like I don't the thing that I see in my mind is like doing a personality test, but really what I mean here is understanding who you are through the act of deeply witnessing your life from like a very grounded perspective. Yeah. So those are my offerings. And yeah, also my podcast, Healing the Spirit, if you're listening to this on Verena's channel is truly one of my favorite offerings. I love creating my podcasts, and um, I usually show up more than once a week, so you get a lot of episodes. Yeah,
If it's okay, I would like to promote another free offerings of mine too.
sure.
I have a free Venus guide that you can download to learn more about Venus. And if you're listening to that on Jonathan's podcast, hop over to my YouTube channel. And yeah, we are both on Instagram. I am pretty active on Instagram. I share a lot of free content there. Jonathan, I love your Instagram channel. You
Mm,
share so much wisdom there. And yeah, I would say that what you just said about this very much, yeah, exploring yourself in an embodied way in your mentorship. I think that what I really learned in the last 1 or 2 years is um, to bring really astrology into the body. So everything that I'm offering, my astro courses, my one-on-one mentoring, my teachings, my guidance, and my single sessions, it's really, I notice that the more I learn about somatic experiencing and coming into my body, the more embodied I teach everything what I'm do, and I share everything that what I'm do. And I feel that very much with you too. So yeah, I think that's that's something that is really, really beautiful. Yeah. It's not about just being in the higher chakras and just talking astro theory. It's really about living and embodying everything. Yeah.
awesome. Thank you, Verena. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you, Jonathan. Thank you for doing this together. And thanks to everyone who listened. Thanks to everyone who's watching. Subscribe to my channel, subscribe to Jonathan's podcast. And we both would love to hear what you are thinking and feeling about Jupiter and Gemini. So, yeah, don't hesitate to contact us. You find all information in the show notes of the podcast and in the video description. And yeah, have fun with Jupiter and Gemini.
Hmm. Hmm. That's great advice.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.